We all know the New York Islanders have problems with the cap. We're going to talk about how they got there and what it'll take to get them out of it. All that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. We have got a busy show today as the draft is coming up tonight. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you could send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long during the offseason. That includes hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, and the draft. So make sure you join us every day, Monday through Friday, for all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. And it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. So every day, as you know, we've been talking about The Athletic and the different polls that they have done ranking NHL teams in different categories. And they did centers, they did wings, they did defensemen, and they've done goalies. And I think they were, more or less accurate with regard to where the Islanders stood. And if you look, go back to the Wednesday and Thursday show this week, we went over all of that stuff. If you listen to it, great. If not, plenty of time to go back and check out those segments. And, I think you could quibble with a spot here or a spot there, but they were in the ballpark. Well, now The Athletic has come out with a ranking of how each NHL team is doing under the cap and cap management. And keep in mind that this is not just a ranking of, okay, who's got the most cap space and then who's got the least cap space. Obviously, it's also not a power ranking. The team at the top of the list right now is the Utah Hockey Club. Utah Hockey Club presently has more than $33 million in available cap space. But that isn't the only reason they're number one. And you'll see that the teams on this list, it's not just, okay, this team has the most cap space, they're number one. So what this is how much cap space they will likely have to improve their rosters beyond players who are already under team control. In other words, you need to get better. How much room do you have to maneuver in order to improve? And we know, just based on recent history, that the New York Islanders need to improve. Yes, in 2020 and 2021, the Islanders went all the way to the conference final. But since then, they've missed the playoffs, lost in the first round in 6 games, lost in the first round in 5 games. They have not won a series in the last 3 years. They are a team that has either barely made the playoffs or barely missed the playoffs, realistically, for the last 5 years. And they are not in a position right now to improve the team from within due to the fact that the Islanders' prospect pool is ranked at or very close to the bottom of the league. Not any real impact players, guys who are projected first line, top pair defenseman, elite, difference maker. And not a lot of guys who are NHL ready either. I mean, what are we talking about at this point? Ruslan Ishkakov has played one regular season game and a playoff game or two. Matthew Maggio, William Dufour, not considered even top 9 players by most scouts. Guys like Alex Jeffries, Isaiah George, a couple of years away. And again, not sure how big an impact they're going to make once they reach the NHL, if they reach the NHL. So where do you think the New York Islanders ranked in cap space, in this basic cap situation ranking? I'll give you the top 5. Utah Hockey Club, number 1. Second, Barry Trotz and the Nashville Predators. Third, the Anaheim Ducks. Fourth, the Chicago Blackhawks. Fifth, the San Jose Sharks. The Islanders nowhere near that top 5. And if you look at the top 5, Utah, formerly the Arizona Coyotes, did not make the playoffs. They're somewhere along in the process of a rebuild, hopefully starting to get some of those young players and draft picks that they stockpiled NHL ready. The Nashville Predators surprised a lot of people and made the playoffs. By ranking second, they may very well be in the best spot of any team here. Anaheim Ducks, still in a playoff drought, trying to rebuild. Blackhawks, also rebuilding. Got Bedard, got a lot of good young players. It's just a question of adding to it and letting some of them mature, but they've got the cap space. San Jose Sharks at 5th, $21.5 million in projected cap space. But boy, oh boy, they're in the thick of a rebuild. The defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, 10th. Boston is 11th. These are teams that made the playoffs, that were contenders, but, not near the bottom of this list. Edmonton, which represented the Western Conference in the final, 21st. The New York Islanders, out of 32 teams in the NHL, dead last. Dead last. 32nd out of 32 teams. Their projected cap space, once they sign their own RFAs, $2.96 million. That's less than $3 million. And their quote about the Islanders: there's no particularly easy route to improvement on the island, which is why buyout speculation has coalesced around J.G. Pageau. We didn't incorporate that in our calculations for the Islanders because it's foolish to assume anything with Lou Lamoriello, but the move would save them an additional $2.75 million this year. Pageau is overpaid, but still an okay third liner, so it's fair to wonder whether the juice would be worth the squeeze. Anders Lee, on the other hand, has more trade value and makes $7 million. That's not an irrelevant amount of money. And while sending away a captain is always an odd thought, there aren't a ton of alternatives. According to The Athletic, who has gotten, the ranks on player personnel spot on, the Islanders are in the worst cap situation to improve their current roster of any team in the National Hockey League. And look, we know this Islander team if they stand pat, they're going to be what they are. They're going to be a fringe playoff team stuck in that muddy middle, finishing somewhere between 7th and 11th, let's say, in the Eastern Conference. The guys on the roster who are on the wrong side of 30, going to get another year older. Anders Lee, another year older. J.G. Pajot, another year older. Kyle Palmieri, another year older. Odds of him getting another 30-goal season go down, and staying healthy go down with each passing season. That's just a fact of life statistically. I mean, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but the likelihood of these guys' games falling off or these guys getting hurt goes up every time they get a year older. That's just a fact of life. So we know this team needs to get younger, faster, and stronger. We know this team needs to improve, that they need to get players who fit Patrick Waugh's system better than this group, which was really built on the Barry Trotz, Lane Lambert approach. We know this team needs change, and yet they don't know how to get it. How did we get into this mess? We're going to talk about that. We're going to discuss how you get out of it. And look, it's an uphill climb, but it's not impossible. We've got all of that and a lot more coming up. Plus, we will continue our draft profile. Ryder Ritchie, another player the Islanders could take 20th overall if Lou Lamoriello holds on to the draft pick, which I don't think he will. And, oh, yes, for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a center who was one of the most traveled players in NHL history, played for a dozen different teams in his NHL career. The last stop in the NHL was the Islanders, and his son is in the NHL right now. Let's see if you can guess who that is. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So how did the Islanders get out of this mess? And, well, let's start with how they got into it. Salary cap management is not the strength of Lou Lamoriello. He has some bad habits. And he himself has kind of admitted it, although he kind of means it in a different way. You know, he's always said, yeah, I signed this guy for too much money, too much term. Yeah, you did, Lou. You did. Look, there are useful players on this roster. Scott Mayfield, useful player. Third line pair defenseman, right-handed shot, good in his own zone when he's healthy, steady, useful component to a good hockey team. But he's not a core player. And to sign him when he's already 30 to a 7-year extension, even if the term in that case is fairly reasonable, doesn't make a lot of sense. Pierre Engvall, again, 7-year deal. for a guy who, even though he did play some on the second line, he's a third line winger for all of his career in the NHL. And yeah, the cap hit is a reasonable $3 million. Not bad for a third line guy. But 7 years? See, here's the thing about the salary cap. And I don't want to sound cold because I'm not. I love watching these players. As a fan, as a member of the media, you develop a relationship with these players. I constantly remind people, for example, with Bo Horvat, players are people. And yeah, when he first came to the island, Bo Horvat struggled a little bit. And part of it was the adjustment of moving from British Columbia to Long Island. And his family, his wife and his kids were still there. And when you're not familiar with a place, not familiar with your co-workers at a new job, your family is somewhere else and you got to make arrangements for them to move and find a new school. Look, it's part of life. These guys are players. When they get hurt, they're people. They're people. And they have to deal with a lot of the things that we all have to deal with in our lives as well. But from a salary cap standpoint, when you're the general manager of a hockey team, these guys are also assets. And the whole idea is to maximize the value of your assets. And this is something that Lou Lamoriello doesn't do a particularly good job of. The whole idea is to buy low and sell high, to hold on to players when they have the most value to your team on the ice, but to trade them away a year too soon rather than a year too late to maximize their value. So when I talk about Lou Lamoriello not doing a great job of cap management or asset management, getting offers for players like Cal Clutterbuck, players like J.G. Pageau, players like Anders Lee, who, according to several sources, and we don't know the exact offer or how accurate this is, but usually when there's enough rumor, there's some, when there's smoke, there's a fire somewhere, right? The fact that he did not make these deals to help maximize the assets this team has is a problem. The long-term contracts given to third line forwards and third pair defensemen, the modified no trade or full no trade clauses given to so many players on this roster that it isn't funny. These things, when you add them all together and you add up, look, Lou Lamoriello is loyal, and I respect that, and I like that. But he himself has said you cannot allow loyalty to interfere with the operation of the hockey team. And sometimes I think he has done that. Deferring to players, yes, it's a nice human gesture. There's been an offer at the trade deadline. Do you want to be traded? It's respectful, but it's not what benefits this hockey team the most. And now you're seeing a situation where, supposedly J.G. Pageau, there was an offer for a first-round pick for Pageau at the trade deadline. Lou did not listen, didn't want to do it. Here we are, a few months after the trade deadline, and to get rid of J.G. Pageau and free up $5 million in cap space, Lou is probably going to have to sweeten the deal. Throw in one of those second-round picks that the Islanders acquired from the Blackhawks or retain salary in order to trade J.G. Pageau. So here's an asset where you had an offer, supposedly, of a first-round pick for this offer, for this asset, J.G. Pageau. And now a few months later, either you're buying him out, which doesn't save you the full $5 million, or you're trading him and giving up a second-round pick or maybe the rights to Oliver Wahlstrom or something else. This is just bad cap management. And to get out of it right now, after these mistakes, Lou Lamoriello is going to have to bite the bullet. He may have to trade or buy out his captain, Anders Lee. whose cap hit is too high. He may have to get rid of J.G. Pageau via trade or buyout because, you're getting less. You're not maximizing the asset, but you're desperate. Look at the Devon Taves trade a few years back. Islanders got a couple of second-round picks for Taves, but, Taves was a valuable player. It was a trade made of desperation rather than design. And it would be the same thing with Lior Pageau this offseason. All of a sudden, you're up against the wall. You don't have what you need to improve your team. And so instead of having a plan that says, okay, this guy is this age, this is his productivity. If I trade him now, I get the most value for him. If I wait, the value goes down because his level of play is likely to go down. Always need to try to maximize the return on your assets. Those assets are players and they're people. But as a general manager of an NHL team, you've got to maximize those assets. And Lou just isn't doing it. And it's great to say, hey, we're going to try to make the playoffs every year. And once we're in the playoffs, anything can happen. Theoretically true, but not the best way to build a long-term winning franchise. Lou Lamoriello either has to make a couple of moves that really improve this team significantly this offseason, and it'll be painful to part with guys who have been great Islanders, who I like, who I respect as people and as hockey players, or he's got to say to himself, you know what? We have to retool. We have to trade away enough guys and replenish the system. And it may be painful. We may endure a couple of seasons where we struggle, but there is a core here. You've got a great goalie in Ilya Sorokin, assuming he returns to form. You've got Bo Horvat. You've got Matthew Barzal. You've got Brock Nelson if you keep him. You've got Noah Dobson. There are 5 or 6 guys who you would identify as the core of this team, and you got to build around them and make some painful decisions about other guys. I love Cal Clutterbuck. Love Matt Martin. They've been great Islanders. But it isn't the time to re-sign them, even if it's a 1-year deal at $1 million or $1.5 million per year. Because you know what? For one Matt Martin and one Cal Clutterbuck, you could sign 2 guys making the same amount of money. Like you could sign 2 Kyle McLeans for that price. You got to make these tough decisions. I hope Lou will do it. I'll believe it when I see it. But, you want to improve this team. You want to Nikolai Ehlers. You want to get McGroarty. You want to get young, talented players. You got to make some painful decisions. And up till now, Lou Lamoriello has avoided them. And it's been more moves out of desperation than out of design. That has to change. And you have to consider both the long-term and the short-term if you're Lou Lamoriello. We've got more to get to on today's show. We'll talk about Ryder Ritchie, a player who the team could use. If they hold on to that 20th pick, they could select him. Plus, our Islanders' birthday of the day, all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer you get to the first pitch. They got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and you get their lowest price guarantee, so GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. My favorite feature on GameTime is the view from your seat. Go on the GameTime app. You'll see a panoramic view from the seat before you purchase the tickets. That way you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Just download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So we continue our look at some players the Islanders could take with the 20th overall pick, assuming they hold on to it. Again, I don't expect them to. Today, Ryder Ritchie, the right wing, stands at 6 feet, 175 pounds. Won't turn 18 until August 3rd. He is still a kid, native of Calgary, Alberta, and playing locally for the Prince Albert Raiders. Played 47 games this past year, 19 goals, 44 points, and 24 penalty minutes. Played in 61 games the year before, 20 goals, 55 points, and 20 penalty minutes. Had 7 points, 3 goals, and 4 assists in 5 playoff games for last year. Ritchie is one of those guys who I think a lot of scouts are kind of divided on. His skating is solid, but not outstanding. Same with his hockey sense. His compete level is okay. It's good, but not as consistent. And clearly, his puck skills are his biggest asset. He's going to have to bulk up a little bit, 175 pounds, not going to get it done in the NHL, but the skill level is there. His skating and his hands are good. He plays with pace, and he can make some plays that a lot of other guys struggle to make. But at this point, he's one of those guys that if he dedicates himself and works hard, he could become, probably a second line type guy. But if not, he can be one of those frustrating draft picks that drive coaches crazy. He's capable of making highlight reel plays. He has different paces to his game and can make adjustments mid-play. He protects the puck very well, can move around, defensive players, and he has a certain amount of patience. And he manages to get his way in and out of trouble. So, look, a lot of people think he can become a 90-plus point guy in juniors next year. Remember, he's still only 17. He's definitely at least 3 years away from the NHL. But Ryder Ritchie, to me, if you get the right coaching and he develops well, here's a guy who could become a really solid middle six forward in the National Hockey League. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And Saturday will be the 53rd birthday of former Islanders center Mike Sillinger, native of Regina, Saskatchewan, drafted by the Red Wings in the first round, 11th overall back in 1989, and played for Detroit, Anaheim, Vancouver, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, Florida, Ottawa, Columbus, Phoenix, St. Louis, Nashville, and then the New York Islanders. Talk about a guy who is well-traveled. And boy, had one of his better seasons his first year on the island, 06-07, 26 goals, 59 points, and a +5 rating with the Islanders. Stayed on the island through the 08-09 season, played in 1,049 NHL games, was with the Islanders when he got his 1,000th game, 240 goals, 548 points, 644 penalty minutes. I always liked Mike Sillinger. He could be second power play. He could be second PK. He could play up and down the lineup, first line in a pinch, second or third line for sure. Good leadership by the time he came to the island, and just a solid guy. His son, Cole, now playing in the NHL with Columbus. One of his better games as an Islander, Halloween night, 2006 at the Nassau Coliseum. Islanders hosting the Blackhawks. Brian Boucher, the goalie for Chicago. Rick DiPietro in between the pipes for the Islanders. And in this game, with the Islanders up 2-0, Sillinger assists on a goal by Alexei Yashin on the power play. That made it 3-0. Islanders Hawks come back to pull within 3-2, But then Mike Sillinger, our Islanders' birthday of the day, scores. Richard Park and Sean Bates on the assist. And then in the final minute, a clinching goal, Jason Blake on the power play, Sillinger and Tom Pody the assist. The Islanders beat the Blackhawks by a score of 5-2. For our Islanders' birthday of the day, Mike Sillinger, a goal, 2 assists, a +1, 3 shots on goal, and he was on the ice for 17 minutes and 15 seconds. So happy birthday to Mike Sillinger. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, we're going to be back. We'll have some short videos and some instant insight and analysis, depending on whether the Islanders make a trade or make a pick. 20th overall. Look at the feed for Locked On Islanders on YouTube. Also, Locked On NHL. I'll be hosting their coverage as well. So it's going to be a busy weekend. We will probably do an extra episode over the weekend. Lots to talk about. This next 2 weeks going to be very exciting. Until then, have a great weekend. Have a great day. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.